Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices.
Living life every day.
Hello, listeners. We hope you're enjoying your day and are so glad that you're joining us.
We're always glad to have you here joining us to know more about the challenges facing children and families in our community to ensure that no child faces continued abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Right. And when we're together, we talk through topics that we see directly affecting the children that we serve here at Henrico Casa.
Yes, but then, of course, those topics always spill over to be ones of interest for all children.
For sure, because really what we see at Casa is maybe what we could call like extreme examples of things any child could deal with, right? The children we serve are just dealing with those things in a big way.
Yeah, that is so true. Because as a reminder, listener, we work with children who have experienced abuse, neglect, or other forms of trauma. And this means, big emotions, right? Big obstacles and big needs.
Yes. And all of that is so true for Sarah and her sisters, the children that I wanted to tell you about in today's Casa case story.
And just a reminder that we change names and identifying details, right, to maintain confidentiality for the little ones in these stories, to protect their privacy.
Right. That's so important to us. Okay, so sweet little Sarah is the oldest of three sisters who have had some tough years living with their biological mom. They've moved frequently, so the schools, social workers, courts, attorneys, all the grown-ups have changed.
Yeah.
And that can make it challenging to get a full story, right? This mom and her girls have been, quote, starting over without much history in each new county and each new school system.
Right. And that means that really they haven't had a consistent person in their life who could see the harmful cycles, the ups and downs of parental substance use, that the girls were just living, right?
Right. And when we at Casa were appointed to the case, things were kind of spiraling for this family. The girls had been removed for their safety and were living in foster care, while their biological mom was supposed to be getting the help that she needed.
Yeah. Well, I know that you, Kristen, will tell us what happened after Casa became involved at the end of the episode. But, when we were planning for this, we thought, let's just really talk about how Casa, right, which, as a reminder, court-appointed special advocates can help children like Sarah. And we are going to focus on that all day.
Yes. And, the question we wanted to address in today's discussion is really just how can Casa help?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking about this because this is what we do every day, right? Day in and day out. I am just so proud every day of all of our advocates and the difference that they make, not just in the present circumstances of these children, right? Like in the current moment,
right?
But we're doing the work that we do in order to help impact and change their whole futures.
Yes. And I'm so glad you said that, referencing kind of the present and the future, because I think that's a great way to structure our conversation today.
Okay.
Casa advocates help make the present better for children, but also change the future for these kids. So we can kind of talk about both, maybe starting with how does Casa help kids right now?
Okay, that's good. So when a child comes to the attention of the court system, right, they're in front of a judge, and that for us, right, is through some type of allegation of abuse or neglect.
Right.
And, maybe that situation was reported to Child Protective Services, or maybe police were called, right, to a situation. And it was pretty intense and a lot of safety issues. So the children had to be removed immediately and placed into foster care. That could be a scenario. There's also scenarios where it's, custody and visitation proceedings that have allegations of abuse and neglect. And so then again, if there's safety issues that are raised, concerns for mental health or substance use, right? The list can go on, but that gets us involved.
Yes, there's so many scenarios, right? But the commonality, like you said, is when the judge hears something that makes them think there's possible abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Exactly.
And that's when a judge would formally appoint Casa to serve on that child's case.
And then what happens is we, as Henrico Casa, right, our program, we then assign a dedicated advocate for this child or or sibling group. And this is a community member, right? Someone who's volunteering their time to help that case, to help that child or group.
Right. And that advocate, again, that volunteer advocate, starts visiting the child or the sibling set and collecting information. By visiting the child or children, they're building a relationship with them, showing up for them week after week, listening to them, just being present. Because what that child needs more than anything is a safe adult walking with them through what is, we're assuming, but we probably know, a really difficult time.
Right. And these kids need hope, right? More than anything else in some ways, right? Safety, but then hope. And our advocates, by showing up consistently, wanting to be with them, wanting to understand their circumstances, that makes a huge difference.
It does.
And I think it gives the children hope that someone cares and that there is a light that things will be better.
Yeah. Right? And, it's really priceless because it helps these kids feel valued. And they likely haven't felt valued in the situations that they've been in.
Right. And beyond that, I mean, then our advocates are gathering information and putting things in motion to help improve that child's situation.
Right. And that's, talking to the schools, asking for educational supports or services. Maybe checking in with the foster parents to see how the kids are doing, what they might need. It can look like making connections to community resources that would be helpful to that particular child. A food bank, a therapist, whoever or whatever that need might be.
Right. And we know that every single child and every single case is different. And so the value of CASA, like in the present, right? Like you mentioned, Kristen, is that, we're learning all of the unique needs of this child and then collaborating with other case professionals to help meet those needs.
Sure. And another potential need the children might have is staying connected with their families, their biological families. And so the CASA advocate may be helping the child write letters to a grandparent or following up to make sure visitation appointments are kept. Things like that can really make a difference for the child's emotional well-being.
Right. And we could keep going, really, and talk about all these different scenarios and really our role.
Right.
But let's sum up what we've said about how CASA, again, court-appointed special advocates, help kids in the now.
Right. They show up, they help meet needs, and they help maintain family connections.
All great, all important.
Yep.
And, what is just as important to me, and, arguably even more important, though, is that how our work in the present is helping then change the future for these children, too.
Yeah. And really that's because we're not only serving these children like directly by visiting with them, but we're also providing a service to our court system.
Our client, you could argue, right, is the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court because we are court appointed, right? The court appoints us to serve children. And so it's the judges who in our court are then looking to us for information that helps them make the best decisions possible for these children.
Right. And those decisions are weighty, they're heavy. That's the whole reason CASA as a national program came into existence. Listener, just a little quick history lesson, but back in the 70s, Judge Sukup in Seattle struggled with this reality that he was making really heavy, life-changing decisions for children he had never seen or met.
Right. And that is, when you really step back and think about it, what a huge responsibility.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Yeah.
And these judges feel that pressure. And, it's good that the judges in some ways don't meet the children.
Right.
We going into court can be traumatizing for anyone, but certainly for children. But then what that means is that there's a gap left where the person who's making the decision isn't hearing directly, right, from the family or the child for whom those decisions are being made.
Right. And the whole point of CASA is to fill that gap, right? We bring the circumstance of the child to light, including, the children's fears, their needs, their wants, their dreams, all of it.
Yes. And maybe we should also pause to explain, when we talk about these decisions, right? What are the decisions that our judges are tasked with making, right?
Okay.
And so what they're looking at are things like, well, who has physical custody of the child, which is basically a fancy way for saying where are they living
Sure.
or where should they be physically living? Who is safe for the child to see and interact with?
Yeah.
If there are concerns for their safety, are there any protective orders that are needed? Should visits with family members be supervised or observed?
Yeah.
And then what about what the parents need? Are we looking at recovery programs or parenting classes or other types of supports? And then, of course, what about the child, right? Therapy or educational services?
Yeah. And really one of the biggest ones, is it in the best interest of this child to be with their family? Whether that means staying with them because they're currently with them or being reunited with them if they were removed. It's a big question.
And that's a big decision, like all capital big, right?
Yep.
And our judges take these decisions really seriously. And as a result, then they want as much information as possible.
As they should.
Which, is then exactly where we come in. So our advocates write very comprehensive reports on the information that they've gathered, the observations that they've made, so that judges receive that full case history, but then also just a full understanding of all aspects of this child's life.
Yeah. And this is where CASA can truly change a child's future,
Yes.
right? Our advocates often know more than anyone else involved. And the information they share with the judge is influential. And the recommendations they make are then directly considered by that judge.
Yes. And over the years, we can see that it's almost always more than 95% of the recommendations that were considered in court were then directly included in court orders.
Wow.
And so what an ability to make a difference we have, and that the judges are trusting that information that we're putting forward.
Without a doubt. And all of the above, everything we just kind of talked through really quickly, is why we're so glad Sarah and her sisters now have a CASA advocate. Their advocate has pulled together a lot of missing pieces, including this family's history with a past CPS locality. And the advocate is constantly putting the focus back on the kids, taking everyone back to the basic question, but what is best for Sarah? Right? Because there's caseworkers and attorneys and other professionals, and they all have roles to play. But it's CASA's singular role, only role, to speak up for the kids.
Right. And, now that CASA is on the case, which I'm super glad about, the judge will have much more information to consider at that next hearing. And that is a good thing because at the end of the day, informed decisions are the best decisions.
Oh, I like that. Informed decisions make the best decisions.
Yes.
That's so true, Janine. And I want to turn that into our call to action for the day. Listener, in case you haven't heard yet, we're in the middle of our second annual advocate recruitment drive.
I love this. I love that we started to do this during the back to school season each year because, as we're preparing children for the new school year, they need book bags and school supplies,
all the fun stuff.
Like new clothes. But for some children, like the kids that we serve, that's actually not enough.
Correct. Right? These children need a dedicated advocate, a CASA, to ensure they have everything they need to be successful at school.
Yeah, and life.
Right. So true. So, listener, your call to action is to register for one of our upcoming information sessions to learn more about the role of an advocate and see if maybe it's a good fit for you or someone else you know. During these sessions, we share details on the role and what it looks like to volunteer as an advocate. And one of our current advocates will be on the call to answer questions.
Yep.
So you will definitely walk away able to make an informed decision on whether or not this role might be right for you.
And we always encourage you to please share this opportunity with others in your life.
Yeah.
And we will be sure to link the information, session details, and registration page in our show notes.
Yep. And we'd love to have you join us. Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Casa's new podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.